Yesterday, during the NFL's annual league meeting that's taking place in Orlando, Florida from March 24th through the 27th, several rule changes were made. A team used to be able to challenge twice in a game, and if they were successful on both of those challenges, they would be able to challenge a third time. Well, now all they have to do is have one successful challenge and will be granted a third challenge even if they lose one of their two. The next rule change that happened yesterday is an amendment that allows for an enforcement of a major foul by the offense prior to a change of possession in a situation where there are fouls by both teams. The proposal was made because fouls by the offense in that situation were ignored, and the committee said it wanted, quote, consistency with an effort to enforce all major fouls. Next up, replay assistants will now be permitted to correct certain types of incorrect calls for roughing the passer and intentional grounding. If a ref gets it wrong and it's clear via replay, the replay assistant can actually tell the ref he needs to pick up the flag, which is pretty freaking awesome. The most controversial rule change of the day, though, was when the NFL banned the pivot hip drop tackle, a tackle that reportedly increases injury rates by up to 20%. That type of tackle is now flaggable for 15 yards and a first down, and players can now also be fined for it. Many players are not happy about this, with guys across the league weighing in about it, including a couple of Chiefs players. Safety Justin Reed said it's a horrible change that really makes it difficult for the defense to make a play, especially when a defensive player is running a guy down from behind. Defensive end Charles Omenihu said the only way to tackle now if a player is unable to square up, meaning front on, is to wrap and roll, which is obviously easier said than done. But hey, it's a done deal. The pivot hip drop is now banned. Some of the other rule changes were as follows. Replay can now be used to determine whether the game clock expired before the ball was snapped, negating judgment calls on delay of game and other things like that. Then the NFL trade deadline has been moved from after week 8 to after week 9. So teams get an extra week to trade a player on their roster or trade for a player from another team. Teams can now also designate up to 2 players for return when they are placed on injured reserve before the 90-man rosters have to get cut down to 53. The old rule was if a player was moved to IR before cutdown day, they had to stay on injured reserve for the entire season. Well, 2 can return now during the season, which is great. And that's something that would have benefited players like tight end Jody Fortson and wide receiver Nico Remigio last year, who had to spend the entire year on IR due to being placed on there before roster cutdown day. Then, NFL teams can now elevate a quarterback an unlimited number of times from its practice squad to its active list to be the team's emergency third quarterback, which is helpful, especially for teams that don't want a third QB on the 53-man roster. The league also announced some scheduling updates, which I'll touch on briefly before moving on to the biggest change of the day regarding these new kickoff rules. NFL EVP for media distribution Hans Schroeder announced there will be a Christmas Day doubleheader, despite it being on a Wednesday. Both of those Christmas games will be bid on by networks, so we don't know where or who is hosting the games yet. But I believe teams that do land these Christmas games will be playing Saturday the week prior rather than Sunday. Well, I'll say this. First off, the NFL lied when they recently said they wouldn't put any Christmas games on the schedule on just any day of the week. And this is also how you know the league cares about money over anything else. Brandon Perna literally tweeted out my thoughts when I saw this announcement. The reason they claimed to ban the pivot hip drop tackle was for player safety, yet they keep adding games that require short weeks for players that adds extra strain to their bodies during these shorter recovery windows. But sure, player safety it is, even though this Hans Schroeder guy listed a reason for the Wednesday Christmas game as, quote, we've seen really some unprecedented growth. So yeah, money over everything. But after that, Amazon Prime, this is another update, will now have a wild card playoff game this year, and the Eagles season opener that's being played in Brazil will air on Peacock, similar to the Chiefs and Dolphins wildcard game just a few months ago. And I'm just going to say it, guys, get ready for more stuff like this, for more networks to have exclusive paywalled access to games, both regular season and the playoffs. It's only going to happen even more frequently as the years go on. And if all that wasn't enough, the biggest change of the day was the NFL announcing its new kickoff rules. This was not a complete surprise. The kickoff rule changes because kickoffs last season were boring as hell. 77% of them resulted in a touchback, and with the returner having the ability to fair catch and get the ball at the 25, it was a no-brainer move. Well, that's all got flipped completely on its head this morning when owners voted on and passed a new hybrid kickoff model that originated in the XFL. This new model makes kickoffs more entertaining while still, in theory, helping to lower concussion rates because players will now line up at the 40 and the 35-yard line. Yes, just 5 yards from each other and can't move until the ball is either caught or reaches the landing zone. The landing zone is the area between the 20-yard line and the goal line, and if the ball lands in that zone, it must be returned. No fair catches allowed unless the ball hits the landing zone and rolls into the end zone. The result is then a touchback to the 20. So that's probably the best case scenario for the kicking team. Ball hits the landing zone, rolls into the end zone, touchback, ball at the 20. Now, if the ball hits before the landing zone, so at the 21, 22, or beyond, or it goes out of bounds, the play is blown dead, and the result is a touchback to the 40. So you don't want that. Then, if the kick lands in the end zone or goes out the back of the end zone, it's a touchback to the 35. Teams may also have 2 returners back there, and they are free to move around as soon as the ball is kicked. But again, if they catch the ball between the end zone and the 20, they have to return it. This is definitely going to increase the amount of kick returns that get taken to the house and will ultimately help play a role in the NFL wanting to get the average scores up in these games because, again, the NFL wants that money. More points scored equals more exciting games equals more cold, hard cash. Another change to the kickoffs is that surprise onside kicks are now no longer allowed, as it would basically be impossible based on how players have to line up. However, onside kicks can still be attempted, but only in the fourth quarter, and they must be declared prior to the play happening. The rules of the onside kick, from what I understand, are still the same from the previous year, so that's it.